This is a quick video about making measurements on your concept art or your turnaround references to show scale and size of different objects. The scene in front of me here has a well, it has some structures, it has some rocks. Very hard to tell whether this well would be over the player's head, whether the player would be able to look down into it, whether the player would be able to trip over it or fall into it. There's no sense of scale on this diorama. So that's something we want to fix. The first thing that I would do there is add in a human figure for scale. This is used really commonly in concept art, and a very simple human sketch can suddenly give a sense of scale to something so that you can tell what a player would be able to do in an environment. This would be particularly important if you were modeling, say, a doorway that a human-sized character would need to fit through, or a weapon that someone would have equipped, or vehicle they would get into. You need a human for scale on that image. It'll save a lot of problems in the game engine if we get that right now. So once we've got this human for scale, what does that really mean? Well, I'm going to show you one way of denoting scale using the line tool here. So the line tool, I've changed the mode from shape down to pixels, and I'm going to just create a new layer for this, and I'm going to call this measurements. Now, what I can do with this is change the weight up here. It's 2 pixels at the moment, that should be fine. I'm going to change the color to black. And what I can do is draw a line out from the human, from the top and the bottom, to denote the height and the ground level. Then I can go into the settings here with the little cog at the top bar, and I can turn arrowheads on the start and the end of the line. And then whenever I make my next line between these two, you'll see it'll make little arrowheads the way it would on an architectural drawing. The final thing to put in is the size of the object that's being measured, in this case a human body. So a human male on average stands at 1.75 meters tall, and we'll be working in meters in Unity, and we'll be setting up our Maya projects to work in meters also. So I'm going to use my text tool, T, or you'll see it on the left hand side here. I'm just going to click, and I'm going to type 1.75 meters. There we go, we have a sense of scale for this person. Now, if you go to Window and Character, you can have your options for text. And you see here that's a wee bit big, so I'm going to click the 1.75 meters, and I'm going to change that down to about 24. That looks a wee bit better, maybe for the size of this image. And then Control and T will transform that. And just to make it neat, I'm going to go up to the corner, and I'm going to hold Shift while I'm grabbing that corner, and I'm going to rotate it around by 90 degrees. And hit Enter. Then I'm going to use my Move tool, V, or you'll see it in the top left, to move that over, and there I've made a measurement. Now, from this one measurement of a person standing in the scene, I can make all the rest of my measurements, and I've gone ahead and done that here. You see, if I tick my other measurements layer on, I've made a whole bunch of different measurements of the most important objects, some their height, others their width, and then I have denoted that with the text tool here. So you can see everything is labeled in meters according to this human reference. So I've essentially estimated that since this human figure is a bit bigger than these gargoyle claws here, perhaps 25 centimeters bigger, about a head bigger, it is therefore 1.5 meters tall. Then over here, it's less than half of the height of this pillar, so I've estimated the pillars to be 4 meters tall. I've estimated the height of the well to be less than the claws, and certainly less than the human, so about 1.25 meters. And then from the 4 meter measurement here, I've measured this, and you can see that it is a bit longer again. And if you want, you can go into your measurements layer, you can use your marquee tool to move things around temporarily to just check your measurements to see if they're roughly right. There's 4 versus 5 meters, that looks about right, and then you can Control Z to undo, Control D to deselect. So it's guesswork, it's estimation, but it's an educated guess at the size that things will be whenever you're modeling them. This is creative work, it is not an exact science, and that's fine. So to draw these human references, the way I would do that is create a new layer. I'll just call that human. I'm going to use a simple brush tool in black and make sure it's hard round brush. And what I'm going to do is just put a head down and then use my L lasso tool, key L. I'm going to switch it to polygonal lasso, and I'm going to simply create a shape from the neck, like so, down, give them legs that are just pointed legs like that. And then I'm going to color that in with my brush tool here. Control D to deselect that, and that is all you need to denote a human. Now, you may not get that right scale-wise. First of all, this human is a wee bit big for what I wanted for my scene, so what I would do is just Control T and then resize that person until it feels a bit about right for the scene, and then you'll be able to set your height, which in this case is 1.75 meters, about which you can measure the rest of your scene. So getting that human in for scale first will really help, and then you can measure the rest around that. If your scene happens to be so big that a human scale wouldn't really help, or so small that it wouldn't help either, you're going to have to find some other frame of reference to measure everything by. Having these measurements will really help whenever it comes to setting up your reference images in Maya. You can see here in my Maya scene how I have the measurement set up for meters, and then all I have to do is count up 4 units, and that is 4 meters in my scene. It keeps everything in scale while you're modeling, which means you don't have to fiddle around with scales in Unity, which can cause other issues of scaling. So try and get your scale set right in your 3D modeling tools, and that will help to prevent any issues with animation, models, textures, and things like that later on. And that's about it for setting up measurements on our reference images or concept art for modeling.